Good day, folks. This is your ticker guy coming at you with Impeachment Monday. We're going to split this into two pieces. You just want to hear the impeachment rant. You can hear it in the first half. And then if you really don't want to hear why it's your fault, that's right, you, me, everybody else in this country, and what's really going on here, then you can just shut it off, which is what probably half the people will do. I'm willing to bet that the engagement number goes to about 0 once we get past about the halfway point. All right, first thing is, people are using the T word on both sides of the aisle, treason. STFU, grab a big mug of it, stir it up real good, sit down, gulp it, and shut up. Treason is the only crime defined in the Constitution. Go find it, read it. It's very clear. There is no possible way that you could read in any way, shape, or form what's going on here as falling within that definition. And the reason it's defined that way is because historically, governments have used treason as a massive means of abuse to kill people they don't like. The founders put that into the Constitution for a very specific reason, and it is to prevent that nonsense. So quit making allusions to something that was crooked as hell and used to be used on a routine basis by the Crown of England to put people in the gallows. Otherwise, maybe we, the people, ought to start doing some putting, because it's outrageous that sort of nonsense would be thrown around. And I don't care if you're a Democrat or a Republican. Both sides of the aisle are doing it. I'm tired of it. That is one thing we should not stand for as a nation. Secondly, this garbage about selling our offices, which appears to have happened with Biden. It appears to have happened with Mitt Romney to an extent, in that he's got a former national security advisor for his 2012 campaign, who, by the way, is also a former spook that is now on the board of this same Ukrainian gas firm, Burisma. Same one. Okay? Same company. And guess what? He was the head of counterterrorism at the time of 9/11. And guess who came after him? That would be Brennan. Who is Brennan? Well, President Obama nominated him to be the director of the Central Intelligence Agency. Pompeo succeeded him. Then we have the fact that this whistleblower requirement that you have firsthand knowledge apparently went away sometime conveniently after the call between Trump and the Ukraine. That is outrageously corrupt. It needs to be run to the ground. I want to know who made that change and why, and at whose prodding. And by the way, there is some evidence, not yet proved, that Schiff had possession of the complaint contemporaneously with that event. Now, did he have it and then go to the offices and tell them to change the rules because he knew it was non-submittable as it stood? That would be an interesting question to ask. I'd like to see that under oath, because that is corrupt as hell as well. Schiff, if you remember, also lied directly about the content of the call between Trump and the Ukrainian president in a congressional hearing. And several of the claims in this alleged whistleblower complaint have already been proved false. Folks, I know people think this is, red team, blue team, orange man bad, orange man good. Guys. This is corruption on both sides of the aisle. Absolutely. And by the way, that's one of the reasons that the swamp, if you will, the government in general, the Congress, hates this thing. I fully expect there to be articles of impeachment voted out of the House. And it'll be very interesting to see what happens once that occurs, because the Senate is then compelled under the Constitution to hold a trial. I will remind you that impeachment is about a 50-50 proposition in terms of getting a conviction. However, it has only been used against two presidents. Neither of them were convicted. the most common office by far to be impeached is a judge, and the sustained impeachments, or the ones where somebody has resigned to avoid it, almost always involve some sort of official corruption. So, we'll see. But there have been very few actual impeachments. I think that the total number is 19, if I remember correctly. And that's, over almost 250 years, it's not very many. All right. So, what's really going on here? Well, I'll tell you what's really going on here. The reason we have this mess, and those of you that want to play red team, blue team, you can just shut this podcast off right now because I'm going to rip you both. We have the monthly Treasury statement that I've brought up. People don't want to talk about it. Spent some time on Stocks and Jocks this morning talking about it. And the reality of it is that the MTS tells us exactly what's going on. It is the cash flow statement, if you will, the federal government. Money taken in, money spent, categorized. Format of it's changed a little bit over the years, but the basic data is still the same. Through August, we're almost out of September. In another week or so, we'll get the end of fiscal year one. But through the end of August, Medicare and Medicaid spent $1.465 trillion. This is at least 80% robbery. That's because your government has been sold to the highest bidder on both sides of the aisle for decades. That $1.465 trillion is materially more than the entire federal budget deficit of $1 trillion. Approximately $1 trillion. It's about 137% of it, in fact. And while we are probably going to have a slightly positive balance for the month of September, because we usually do, September is a tax payment month, you can be very sure that we will not have the amount of money spent by Medicare and Medicaid go down because, of course, once it's spent, it doesn't get unspent. So it will go up, probably by about 8 or 9%, which means that we're probably going to have somewhere around $1.6 trillion. This is a 7% increase from last year. At a 7% rate of increase, the spending doubles every 10 years. This fiscal year thus far, the federal government has taken in $3 trillion in taxes. In 10 years, the federal government is going to try to spend the entire $3 trillion on Medicare and Medicaid. That leaves not $1 for defense, not $1 for interest, not $1 for education, not $1 for anything else. Food stamps, whatever else have you. None of that. Zero. Now, if you really, by the way, that also includes the power, we haven't paid the power bill for the Capitol building yet. So, there's no lights on in Washington, D.C. That would be an improvement. But if you actually believe that we're going to get there, you have rocks in your head. May I point out, for those of you that say, oh, well, this is like a one-time thing, or it's a one-off, it's going to change. Oh, no, it's not. I have in front of me the fiscal year 2000 year-end Treasury statement. In fiscal year 2000, the federal government spent $413 billion. Now, there are some minor differences because the government from time to time moves things around in the buckets. But it's pretty close. So we've had between a 300 and 400% increase in the last 20 years. 400%, gee, isn't that funny? That would be two doublings, right? A double, then another double would be 400%. All right, 2 times 2 is 4. There's that 7% number again. Uh-oh. Been going on for 20 years. And Obamacare and Obama were going to bend this cost curve and stop it. Oh, really? Stop it, huh? Not on your life. That was a lie. Those of you who are Bernie Sanders supporters or anybody else on the left, Elizabeth Warren, anyone else, you think you can go to single payer or any other kind of socialized medicine system with these numbers currently in the federal government? You have rocks in your head. You literally have rocks in your head. And if this is not stopped, which has all come about because people on both the left and the right side of the aisle have sold out this country and sold you out to the medical and pharmaceutical industries along with the so-called insurance industry. And I remind you folks, insurance payments and premiums are simply a function of how much something costs. If you drive a car that costs 3 times as much as the other one that you used to have and you want collision coverage on it, and therefore it's 3 times as expensive to fix it when it gets in a wreck, your insurance premium for collision coverage is going to be about 3 times as expensive, assuming that both of them wreck at about the same rates. Why? Duh. Are you really that dumb? The only way to make health insurance costs go down is to go after the cost of health care. Period. And if you think the federal government's going to do it, they are not. Medicare and Medicaid has been supposedly doing it for the last 20 years. And what have they done? They've had the cost go up by a factor of 4. You want to talk to me about this? About how you're going to solve this problem? The only way you're going to solve it is to break up all these monopolies and put all the people involved in it in prison. And I'm going to read to you just one piece of this. Trusts, etc., and restraint of trade illegal penalty, 15 United States Code, Section 1. It reads, every contract combination in the form of trust or otherwise or conspiracy and restraint of trade or commerce among the several states or with foreign nations is declared to be illegal. Every person who shall make any such contract or engage in any such combination or conspiracy hereby declared to be illegal shall be deemed guilty of a felony, and on conviction thereof shall be punished by fine not exceeding $100 million if a corporation, or if any other person, $1 million, or by imprisonment not exceeding 10 years, or by both said punishments in the discretion of the court. Section 2 says essentially the same thing. It's very simple. It says every person who shall monopolize or attempt to monopolize or combine or conspire with any other person or persons to monopolize any part of the trade or commerce among the several states or with foreign nations, and then goes on to prescribe the same penalties. $100 million for a corporation, $1 million for a person in 10 years. In the can. Hello, slam, slam. There has not been one charge leveled under this statute. And by the way, that statute says absolutely nothing about consumer prices. Nothing. Hello, Jeff Bezos. It is also a fact that all 50 states have the right to bring civil side suits under this statute. Every single attorney general on their own can do this under what is called parens patriae, which is the doctrine that essentially you're a child. They can do this under Section 15C, Sub A. 1. Any attorney general of a state may bring a civil action in the name of said state as parens patriae on behalf of natural persons residing in the state to secure monetary relief by reason of any violation of sections 1 to 7 of this title. Those who say that there is some problem with the state attorney generals and their ability to go after this within their state are full of crap. They're lying. The insurance and medical industry has twice gone all the way to the Supreme Court to try to get ruled that they have an exception to this law under another law called McCarran-Ferguson. The first such case was Royal Drug. It was in the 1970s. The second one followed a few years later, Maricopa County. They lost both times. It is beyond dispute at the Supreme Court of the United States that this law applies to the entire medical industry. Period. End of discussion. Full stop. And this set of nonsense is destroying the federal and state budgets. It is this corruption at a grand scale that is stealing $3 trillion a year from Americans. And the fact that it has gone unpunished and you have sat there and talked about orange man bad or blue team or red team, instead of insisting that this garbage stop, that you have people running around thinking that they can sell their office in the Ukraine and China and everywhere else. And the problem is, I don't care who's president next. If this doesn't stop by 2024, Medicare and Medicaid are not going to be able to pay the bills, and this entire thing is going to blow up in your face. I have been on this repeatedly for the entire 10 plus years that the Market Ticker has been in publication. Nobody will pick this up in the political field and political realm because they're all profiting tremendously from it up and down the line on both sides. You want to waste your time on Orange Man bad, you go right ahead. Because in about 5 years, every city in the United States is going to be burnt to the ground when the food stamp checks and the Social Security checks and the Medicare checks stop coming. I'm your ticker guy, and that's my view.